afternoon. I'm Kevin Doherty. I'm Managing Director of FITCH in Dubai. You can see the title of the presentation I'm going to talk to you about. I thought it was really interesting listening to the last presentation, particularly when they talked about, the importance of the human within this, and keep going back to, the human need. And I think that's absolutely true, and it's very much something that lives throughout the thinking that FITCH have. And I think you'll see that throughout this presentation. So, for those of you who don't know FITCH, we're the world's leading brand and retail consultancy. We've been around since 1972, so quite a pretty long time. 15 studios in 8 countries and over 400 people. Work for big global brands. We work for Sephora, doing their omni-channel strategy, M&S. And in this region, we work for Centrepoint, doing the store of the future, actually in Doha. We did Home Center in Mall of the Emirates. And if you ever walked into a Do store about 10 years ago, maybe longer, we designed those. So, in terms of what we do, we execute in graphical design, we execute in 3D design and digital. But right at the heart of everything we do is strategy. And it drives everything that we do and the way we think. And we put the human at the heart of that strategy. And then we work out the right solutions for that human-centered need. And then we deliver them, as I said, either through graphics, creating logos and brands, through motion graphics, but also through 3D design, from architecture through to the interior design, the customer journeys, right through to sort of rollout strategy and format strategy, and then also through digital. And digital for us can be as simple as a web, or a website, or an app, or something a lot more complicated and a lot more relevant to the sort of world of retail that we're best known, or experience that FITCH is best known for. So, we have a lot of creative technologists within our studios. But as I said, at the heart of everything is strategy. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how that strategy makes those connections between the physical, human, and digital. So, we talk about designing the future. Why we talk about it that way is that everything we do is driven by insight. So we have strategists sitting in every single office across the globe, sharing information. We see all the trends that are happening, not on a micro level, but on a macro level. And some of the stuff that's happening out in, say, outside in the East is really interesting. And some of the stuff in America is also very interesting, particularly regarding sort of big box retail and all the issues they're facing there. And so I'm going to talk you through a series of case studies that dramatize our approach. And the last one I think you'll find very interesting as a way to look at the challenges a lot of shopping centers are facing with brands closing down and stores closing down, and an interesting and innovative way of reacting to that. So, online, offline, etc. So, what is online? Online is all about convenience. It's very simple. Reasons why you shop online: 73% shopping from the comfort of home, 55% accessing wider choice, 49% uncovering great deals, 27% sourcing products quickly. Comfort, range, price, and speed. It's all very simple. So, online shopping is all about convenience. So, if online is so convenient, what's the point of having stores? If all that we need is to find things in a really quick and simple manner, what is the point of having stores? So, one of the interesting things that we're noticing is the online halo effect of physical retail. So what do I mean by that? When a store opens in a trading area, online and social traffic go up 45% for new brands and 36% for established brands. Online sales go up between 20 and 40% on average. And at the ends, they go up, some of them have gone up over 300%. Lifetime value can increase by over 50%. So, basically, if you open a physical store, it has a positive impact on your online sales, right? So that becomes a really interesting dynamic and a really interesting way of thinking about physical stores in a very different way. So rather than purely judging them on the sales per square foot of the store, maybe we can start to look at them in a different way. Maybe there's a case to look at them as a tool for acquisition, and therefore judging them on cost per acquisition, and therefore lifetime value. I'm going to come back to that, but that's a really interesting way of starting to think about physical stores. But when you ask people why they shop in a physical store, their reasons are very simple. Being able to try the products, being able to browse on a whim, socializing with friends, and the store atmosphere. It's all about experience. Oh, sorry. So, stores are all about experience, and about 5-10 years ago, that was a very simple thing. Everybody was rushing into digital, so experience means digital, okay? So here is an example of a store we did about 10 years ago when the whole world was rushing into putting digital into their stores. And I just want to show it to you as an interesting case study of what we learned from this. So, as I mentioned, done several years ago. We got quite a lot of learnings. Anyone have any views on what they thought would work and what wouldn't work from that store? Any more thoughts? So, things that didn't really work for us. Just putting the website in there doesn't really work because you're in a store. So why would you need the website? Other things that didn't really work were the sort of magic mirror when you're trying on or when you're not trying on a clothing, you're actually having it sort of reflected onto the mirror because you've got a change room next to you and you've got the physical garment. The feedback that we got of the things that worked really well were things like the measurement, where we use digital to measure your size and give you an accurate measurement. What else worked really well was the comparison, being able to see an image of yourself with different articles of clothing in side by side. And also the Style Pro, where you sit down and you can consult with somebody. And if you take all of those things back, what that really means is basic human needs are being met, right? So the need to know exactly the right size so I can go and find that product. The need to see which of these two things fits me or suits me best, and having a comparison side by side. You've met my need, you've helped my purchase decision. But also the dealing with somebody, to consult with somebody, to help me find the right decisions, to explore different options, to consult and guide me. The human bit came through really, really strong. So great having a physical store, great having digital in it, but really the human bit was kind of the glue that really held it together. And fundamentally, people make a difference. Designing around the person makes a difference. So let's start with people. About 10 years ago, we came up with a hypothesis on the way that shoppers shop and the mind states they're in. And we call them locating, exploring, and dreaming. I always use mobile phones as a really simple example of this. So locating would be as a locating mission. So I need a set of Apple headphones. I just want to go into the store, find them really quickly, pay for them really easily, and get out. That's a locating mind state. An exploring mind state is I'm looking at two different phone options, the new Samsung and the new Apple. I haven't made a decision, and I want you to help me make the right decision. I want you to, or validate the decision I'm making for myself. So help me explore the options and get to the right answer. And dreaming is, I'm really interested in tech. Can you inspire me? Right? Can you just show me the Internet of Things or connectivity in the house? Just inspire me. Make something that's going to make me want to come in on a whim. So we developed this hypothesis of these three mind states, and we looked at them globally and validated them through research. And these mind states exist. We all have them. They're not a segmentation, and we can flick between them. We can flick between them from one shopper journey to another, and sometimes we can even flick between them when we're actually on a single journey. So, for example, I've dropped my phone, I've cracked the screen, I just want to go and get it fixed. So rushing into the shop, I'm in locating mind state, they say, fine, we can do this, 10 minutes, no problem. At that point, I've got 10 minutes to kill. I flick into dreaming. So it's not that one mind state is more important than the other. There are three mind states, and we continually move between them. And we as retail designers, as store designers, as retail consultants, we need to think about those three mind states of locating, exploring, dreaming, and work out how we get the balance between them in our different formats, but also looking at the journey of the shopper, not just in store, but also offline. Because as retailers, we have different touch points to respond to those mind states. And those touch points are physical, human, and digital. So the physical is an immediate, immersive, and tactile experience. So it's the podium here. The human is empathetic, it's approachable, it's kind. It's the reasons we trust people. It's the reasons we want to go and talk to people. And the digital is a rich medium to tell connected stories, to tell interactive stories, to engage over the sort of long term. So we look at the consumer and shopper needs from those mind states, and then we map out the journey through the physical, human, and digital touch points we have, both in store and out of store. And it's not that one of those is right and one of those is wrong. It's not that one of those is more important. It all depends on the shopper need. So if you put yourself in the shoes of the shopper, you can then work out the solutions to their needs through these touch points. And I'm going to show you a few different examples of where we've mixed up those three aspects in different ways to get to the right solution for that particular brand. So this is Mealy. This is a store that we created for one of their experience centers that was going to go into town. So Mealy have large experience centers, usually out of town. This is in Canada. Usually out of town. And those experience centers have all their equipment and shows off everything that they can do. The problem with out-of-town large boxes is that they're beginning to die. Certainly in America, they're beginning to die. And people aren't traveling out to see them. So their challenge to us was, how do you create an experience center in a small space in the heart of the city? And the solution to that was, we need to use digital, but we need to use it in an innovative and interesting way. And rather than just having screens, we started thinking about, well, how about if we use the product itself as our screen, as our palette for our digital solutions? So as you can see, that's a really small store, and we had the challenge of showing off some product, but also dramatizing the benefits of the product, using digital to do it, and not having the screen space to do it. So we simply used the product itself, used projection onto the product, used digital in an interesting way that reacted to the needs of the consumer, which was to really understand why they should spend more on Mealy, to understand the differences, the Mealy difference in their products. This next one is Hamleys in Moscow. And Hamleys in Moscow is the largest children's store in the world. And they came to us and said, we want to create the best children's store, the greatest children's experience store in the world. Very simple. And so we kind of started thinking about how children's stores were laid out and how they're sort of run, and they're very operational. You have lots of stacks of toys. And if you think about them, if everybody's got children here, if you go to a children's store, what is the one thing they want to do? They want to pull everything down and they want to play with it. So why don't we actually design a store that's really for the children rather than the adults and rather than traditional sort of ways of retailing, and actually allow them to sort of have this immersive world of play. And that's what we did here. And when you've got an immersive world of play, when you've got lots of toys, you want to play with the toys. You don't really need to put a lot of digital in there because they've got the toys there to play with. And that's what we did with this one. Hamleys. Put yourself in the shoes of the shopper or the consumer, which in this case is small children, and you get to a place where you don't need digital. You just need a place where they can play. The next one is that perfect combination of physical, human, and digital. And it's for a brand called Arçelik, which is a Turkish white goods brand. And traditionally, Arçelik had presented all its goods in a very sort of basic warehouse way. So you had all your fridges and your freezers lined up, and your cookers and your food processors and your hair straighteners, and it was all done in a very sort of warehouse regimented way. What we wanted to do with them is, and they're a dominant brand in their market, we had an opportunity with them, because they were quite brave, to try and push things a little bit, to try and create a stronger connection with the brand, to try and sort of connect their home experience with the brand experience they're going to have in the retail environment. And so we kind of created this thought around, Turkish hospitality and bringing in people who could dramatize the goods by using them in a way that was reflective of how consumers use the goods, but also then using digital in a really sort of honest and simple and clear way, again reflecting consumer needs. So quite a dramatic step change from a warehouse presentation, all about experience, all about putting the consumer in the shoes of their needs at home and dramatizing those needs in the stores. So they make a connection that says, yes, I want these products, or yes, I can see how this is relevant to my life. But also, it's a really interesting experience for them. It's a great place to go, and people want to go there, and it constantly changes as well. So they get new experiences every time they go back. So immersive experiences. And the last sort of bit on this stage of the presentation is talking about the role of the brands. One of the things that we do is we look at the consumer journey. And we look at it online, offline, and in person. We look at it through the physical, human, and digital. And if you break yourself back to, for example, buying a mobile phone, and you go through that process, you tend to come out with a very similar journey, whether you're a brand in Singapore or whether you're a brand in America. If it's just looking at the experience and relevant journey of buying that phone, you're going to come out to the same journey. So why do you get different experiences? And different experiences happen when you have different brands and you listen to the brand and the brand values. So I'm going to show you two stores that have been opened very recently, one in America, one in Singapore, for telecom brands. And they opened pretty much the same time, both designed by Fitch, both being put up for the World Retail Congress Store of the Year. But they are dramatically different. And the reason behind that difference is the brand. So the first one I'm going to show you is Singtel. So Singtel is the leading telecom provider in Singapore. And they are, as the leading telecom provider, they're all about making the experience really simple, making the experience really sort of what we call frictionless, so smooth and easy. And we did that by designing the most intelligent store. We just basically said, how do you just make this a really simple, easy experience? And the way we looked at it, we looked at it again from the consumer perspective. How do we use technology to smooth out all those difficult moments, all those peaks and curves, the queuing, etc.? And so we used that as our sort of start point to then drive the design. And we worked out all those consumer journeys, all those pain points, how we could smooth those out before we actually started designing the store itself. their ambition to be the most intelligent store in the world, where you can make everything really simple for the consumer, where their customer journey is easy, where digital technology allows you to explore easily by picking up a phone, getting some information about it, picking up another phone next to it, and having a direct comparison. Just make the process simple for me. In contrast, we also designed a store for T-Mobile in the States. And in the States, T-Mobile is a challenger brand. Its target audience is a younger audience. It tries to connect to them on a much more emotional level. So where Singtel is make things easy, T-Mobile is more about reflecting you as a person, as the audience. And they know that as a challenger brand that's targeting that younger audience, that they're going to alienate, or there'll be certain rafts of the demographics that won't buy into them as a brand. But they know that if they can sort of focus in and zero in and own one area, then they can be successful in that area. And that was their brief to us. As a challenger brand, come up with something disruptive, come up with something different and new, and reflective of the audience they want to target. And don't worry about the rest. So retail's going through some changes. We would say that, and we would have said that we've always done this, but I think increasingly we have to focus on the consumer. A lot of the time, operations drives how we lay out the store rather than the consumer experience and putting ourselves in the shoes of the consumer. And if you do that, then your retail will create an experience that consumers will want to go to. Which all sounds fabulous. And it sounds as if you watch this that there was no issues with retail. But I think we all know that it's going through some challenging times. Particularly if you look at some of the big box retailers, the Toys R Us, Bon-Ton. This is where the real sort of struggle is happening within the market. So we're seeing these big box retailers closing down, and we're seeing them in empty or boarded up spaces in shopping centers, which is a really bad look for the shopping centers. It's a bad look if you want to bring people in. It kind of sends out a message that, should I be here? Is this the right place for me? Is this a vibrant place? And yet at the same time, we have this dichotomy. All of these online brands, these native digital brands, are opening stores. So the question is, why are they doing it? We go back to this chart. Does anyone actually know why native digital brands are opening stores? What's their driver? What's their KPI? No? So their key driver, digital brands love data. Right? That is what they look to get when they open up e-commerce. They look to the data. How can I incrementally improve? How can I get information that will actually help me improve my performance, help me target the relevant audience with the right messages. So they look for data. It's absolutely vital in the way that they trade. But what they're finding is that the cost per acquisition online is increasing. The cost per acquisition through channels like Instagram is going up year after year. So they're actually finding it's becoming quite an expensive way to get people engaged and immersed in their brand. So they're actually looking to physical stores to feed that acquisition and feed that average spend. So what they think is, well, I'll go and set up an online store because I've done that, an offline store. I'll set up a physical store because I've done that online. But actually setting up an online store is really easy. There's lots of templates. There's lots of different software out there that you can tap into. Whereas actually setting up a physical store, that's a challenge. It's heavy on capital expenditure. It's complicated. You have to get store design. You have to get permits, permissions, fixtures, fittings. Testing it is hard. And of course, people are asking you to go into 5, 7, 10-year leases. It's a really difficult thing to just kind of go, I want to go and test physical stores. The barriers are high, but what if we could lower them? So this is the question that MECS+R, which is the
as a digitally native
third
brand,
largest
you've built your
shopping owner,
business
operator of shopping
pixel by
centres,
pixel.
tasked
Online,
FITCH with.
you have all the tools to succeed, but your success doesn't have to stop at the screen. Physical retail can fuel your brand's growth, helping you create new and deeper brand experiences. But the path to physical retail requires a lot. You'd typically navigate through a web of complexity to open your store. Finding the right space, negotiating a lease that isn't too long or too costly, getting permits, designers, and contractors, and that's just the opening. Add setting up store operations, security, store analytics, and the complexity multiplies. That's where we come in. Meet BrandBox by MECS+R, the all-in-one service and solution helping brands open physical stores. BrandBox makes launching a physical retail experience simple. With short-term leases, a simplified design and build-out process, and help every step of the way, BrandBox helps your brand thrive in both the digital and physical domains. Here's how it works. You're paired with a BrandBox Success Manager, who gets to know your brand's goals, then guides you through a tailored process. As a MECS+R company, BrandBox gives you access to MECS+R's best properties, incredibly profitable shopping centers with stellar co-tenancy. We'll fit you with the perfect lease, a time period giving you the runway to test and learn how your brand performs in real life, without locking you into something too long-term. We've also made design and build-out easy and cost-effective. We'll connect you with experts to bring your brand to life, using BrandBox's flexible fixtures. We'll even connect you with partners in technology that can help your store staff up and operate. Finally, we'll make sure you're set to leverage sensors that help you understand foot traffic, conversion, and customer flows, so you can test, optimize, and improve your store experience. Get ready to take your brand beyond the screen with BrandBox, taking digitally native brands from pixel to physical.
So, we took 20,000 square foot stores, the ones that are really struggling, ones that are boarded up, and we looked at ways of cutting them up in a very simplistic way with a very sort of templated design that would allow these digital native brands to test physical retail over a much shorter period of time. So if we break that down a little bit, the task MECS+R asked us to do was actually work hand in hand with them on this. So we had to sort of put ourselves in the shoes of those digital native brands and how they've run their business in order to be able to understand how they would be comfortable doing this. So the first thing we did was we created a series of assets online so they could actually begin to learn about the world of physical retail and the different aspects that they needed to get their head around. And anybody who could go online and find those. And then you could sign up to become a member, and you could start planning, defining what your store will do, how it will function, where it will be located. Start really beginning to think it through. We created a series of templates and tools that would allow them to understand that process. And then this is really where, I guess, the FITCH bit took over. We designed and we helped build and organize different ways for those brands to express themselves in those spaces. And we'll show you a film it was part of that film, but it's a bit more detail to explain it. And then we helped them to run. So we created a dashboard, a diagnostic tool that allowed them to get all that rich data and learn about when and where and why consumers were coming in, what the footfall was, what the impact of opening that space had in online sales in the sort of areas around those stores. And basically find out for themselves in a cheap or in a value-driven, cost-effective way whether this physical store for a digital native brand worked as an acquisition tool. And of course, for Macerich, what it meant was they could take some of those big box spaces that were empty, that were making their malls look tired and a bit run down, or a place where a consumer would be walking past kind of feeling, well, where's the life here? And give it life. Not only giving it life a space that was closed, but also giving it life in a way that space would change. It would change every 3 months or 6 months or 9 months because there'd be a constant sort of feed of new brands coming in. So actually it's giving you more and more reasons to come back. So it's very much a sort of win-win scenario. So as I said, the first thing we did was create some tools, some information online to just begin to help digital native brands get their head around what they needed to do to open a physical store. Because this is the way these guys work. They look online, they look to learn, they look to understand everything that they can before diving in. Then, once they've done that, we created these sort of templates. So we created 3 or 4 different layouts that they could use that were very easy for us to sort of slot in and out. And then we had 12 look and feels that we could then layer over the top of that. And you can sort of see it was kind of almost like a sort of Tetris approach. So you could move the walls around, the fixtures could drop in to meet the objectives of the stores. And it allowed them to test different approaches. So, as you can see, there's different sort of layouts. You can see there's one that's about to come up, which is a completely different size as well. And all of that was very easy for them to slot in, and they could then dress with sort of permanent or with semi-permanent graphics and give it a different look and feel. So if they took it for 3 months and they felt it was working, but they wanted a bigger store, they could expand it out. If they wanted a smaller store, they can contract it. Or if it didn't work for them, they could exit. What we also found is that it informed from Macerich their approach to leasing. So they knew how successful, they got the data, they knew how successful these stores were. So they could then go embark on a conversation around leasing for a permanent store if that's what the brand was interested in. And rather than just comparing it to stores around it, what they were leased for, they could actually start to link in their leases with the performance of these stores. So actually it began to change the way they viewed, which is not something they expected to do. It began to change the way they viewed and thought of their leasing strategy. So the first brand box opened in November 2018 in Tysons Corner, Virginia. And you can sort of see the brands up there. So those brands were, I've listed them here. Winky Lux, it's a cosmetics brand, whose pure objective was to increase their Instagram followers. So they weren't worried about selling out of this store. They just wanted to increase their Instagram followers because that was their main driver of their business. Increase Instagram followers, people would then buy. So their KPI was get more followers, and that helps the cost per acquisition. Nadam was an affordable cashmere brand. Urban Stores is a gifting store for flowers and gifts. Nectar was a bedding store, again, an online store. They just wanted people to come in and physically touch the product because one of the feedback they had was people were tempted by their product, but they didn't trust it because they didn't know it, and they didn't have enough advocates around. So they wanted to get some advocates and get people to feel comfortable with the brand before they commit to it. The other interesting thing we didn't expect to happen is that we got a couple of brands who were used to going into physical store who decided they wanted to come and test this as well. So DKNY decided they wanted to test a store that was outside of department stores. So you can see up, so we've got my pointer up here, DKNY trialing it as well. So that was about a year ago. The 2 or 3 of those have swapped out. A couple have gone into sort of permanent leases. And MECS+R are opening new locations in California and Scottsdale, opening new examples of this brand box approach, allowing digital native brands to test in a way that's a little bit more permanent than a pop-up and a little closer to a permanent store, but in a way that means they don't have to commit to heavy CapEx, they don't have to commit to long leases, and they can find out, does physical retail work for them? Does it give them that halo effect? So, when thinking about the future of retailers, we believe there are things that you need to do which are be driven by consumer needs. Right? Put yourself in the shoes of the consumer and the consumer mind states. Then deliver the right mix of physical, human, and digital touchpoints. Don't get run away with digital for digital's sake. If it's not meeting a human need, if it doesn't meet a purpose, if it doesn't have a purpose that meets a human need, then digital is just digital for technology's sake. Fundamentally, we're human and we have needs, and we have to and as retailers, we have to deliver against those needs to give them a compelling experience. Be an experience that delivers against the brand promise. Right? So make sure you understand your brand, make sure that you reflect your brand, and make sure that you're a mirror of that brand. And start to think like online retailers. We think that the lessons that we're learning from digital native brands going into retail is going to change the way we think as retailers. As core retailers who've gone into their world, we need to start looking at them and what they're doing coming into our world. And how they're learning about our world and how they're thinking about it in different ways. How they're looking at it as a halo effect, not just cost per sales. Thank you.